Welcome back to the channel, you beautiful people. Today we are witnessing what can only be described as a masterclass in corporate audacity. If you thought the original price of the PlayStation 5 Pro was a hard pill to swallow back at launch, get ready, because Sony has just decided to replace that pill with a jagged brick. As of April 2nd, 2026, Sony is implementing a massive coordinated price hike across their entire ecosystem. We are talking about the console, the accessories, the services, and even the digital storefront experience itself. In many regions we are looking at a 20% increase. This isn't just a price adjustment due to inflation, it is a declaration of fiscal war on your savings account. Let us start with the headline that is currently setting every forum from Reddit to NeoGAF on fire. The PlayStation 5 and the PS5 Pro are getting more expensive. Think about that for a second. In the history of gaming, consoles usually follow a very predictable, almost sacred path. They launch at a high price to recoup research and development costs. Then, as the technology matures, as the chips become easier to manufacture, and as the slim models hit the shelves, the price goes down. That was the contract. We put up with the early adopter tax because we knew eventually the platform would become accessible to everyone. Sony, however, seems to be operating in an alternate dimension where the laws of economics have been inverted. We are 5 years into this generation. Any other era of gaming, we would be seeing $300 bundles and greatest hits collections. Instead, we are getting hit with a 20% markup on 5-year-old hardware. Sony is essentially trying to convince us that a piece of technology is like a fine wine, that it somehow gets more valuable the longer it sits on a shelf. But this isn't wine, this is a computer with a cooling fan that is probably starting to collect dust. The timing of this is especially insulting. We are sitting here in early 2026 and the whispers about the PlayStation 6 are no longer whispers, they are screams. Every major analyst is pointing to a late 2027 or early 2028 release window. So Sony's sales pitch to the public is essentially this: please give us nearly $1,000 for a console that will be technically obsolete in 18 months. It is like trying to sell someone a top-of-the-line gasoline car the week before the world bans internal combustion engines. It isn't just expensive, it is strategically delusional. And for my viewers in Poland, the situation is even more dire. We are used to the European tax, where a $500 price tag in the US magically becomes 600 euros or 2,800 zloty. But with this 20% hike, the PS5 Pro is no longer a gaming console, it is a luxury asset. It is reaching a point where you have to make a genuine financial decision. Do I buy a mid-range PC that can help me work, create content and browse the web? Or do I buy a white plastic box that plays a slightly prettier version of Horizon Zero Dawn? At these prices, you could literally buy a used car in some parts of the country. Sure, that car might have a check engine light that blinks in Morse code, but at least the car has a built-in versus mode called surviving the commute. Before we go any deeper into the hardware, I want to address the hidden scandal that is currently brewing in the shadows of the PlayStation Store. Reports are flooding in that the storefront is no longer a level playing field. This is the dynamic pricing controversy, and it is the most anti-consumer thing I have seen in a decade. It appears that Sony is using an algorithm to analyze your specific buying habits. If the data shows you are a whale, someone who buys every big exclusive on day one, someone who has a library of 400 digital games, the store might actually show you a higher price than it shows a casual user. It is a loyalty penalty. Usually when you are a frequent customer, you get a thank you, you get a discount or a rewards card. Sony has decided to do the exact opposite. They are essentially saying, we know you are addicted to our ecosystem, we know your entire digital life is tied to this account, so we know you will pay an extra $10 or $20 because you have nowhere else to go. It is the same psychological trick used by airlines to jack up ticket prices. When they see you searching for the same flight multiple times, they track your IP, they track your cookies, and they squeeze you. Seeing this behavior in the gaming industry is a betrayal of the community that built the PlayStation brand. It turns the act of buying a game into a game of cat and mouse where the house always wins. By the way, if you are finding this breakdown helpful and you want to stay updated on how the industry is trying to pick your pocket, do me a huge favor. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It costs you exactly $0, which is a price Sony hasn't figured out how to hike yet, and it helps me keep the lights on so I can keep making these deep dives. The algorithm loves engagement, and frankly I love knowing that I'm not the only one frustrated by this corporate gaslighting. Now let us talk about the absolute disaster that is the current PS Plus Premium offering. Sony has been trying to justify the high cost of their top-tier subscription by promising access to the classics. They want us to feel nostalgia, to remember the good old days of the PS1, PS2 and PSP. This month they added Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection. For a fighting game fan, this should have been a massive win. Tekken 5 is arguably the peak of the series for many, but in a move that can only be described as peak corporate laziness. They didn't give us the PlayStation 3 version, which had high-definition graphics and full features. No, they gave us the PSP version. Let that sink in for a moment. You are playing on a PS5 Pro, a console capable of trillions of calculations per second, and Sony is serving you a game originally designed for a handheld screen the size of a candy bar from the year 2006. But wait, it gets better or worse, depending on how much you value your sanity. The PSP version of Dark Resurrection on the PS5 currently has no local versus mode. It is a fighting game where you cannot fight your friends. It is a competitive experience where the only competition is your own mounting sense of regret. They are charging you premium prices for a neutered, low-resolution handheld port that lacks the core feature of the entire genre. It isn't a classic, it's a digital corpse that Sony has dressed up in a premium suit and shoved onto the store. It is an insult to the legacy of Tekken and a slap in the face to anyone paying for the top tier subscription. So why is this happening? Why now in 2026? It is simple. Sony is currently suffering from a severe case of winner's curse. They have such a massive lead in the console space that they have become arrogant. Xbox has spent the last 2 years trying to find its identity, focusing more on PC and multi-platform releases than on outselling the PS5 hardware, without a direct aggressive threat to their dominance. Sony has become the fat cat of the industry. They are testing the limits of brand loyalty. They want to see if the PlayStation brand is Apple-proof. Apple can raise prices every year because people feel they need an iPhone to function in society. Sony wants to see if you feel you need a PlayStation enough to accept being overcharged for hardware and underserved on software. They also know that Grand Theft Auto 6 is looming on the horizon. They know that millions of people will buy a PlayStation at any price, just to play that one game on day one. Sony isn't selling you a console anymore, they are holding your hobby hostage. They are banking on the fact that you will complain, you will tweet, you will post angry comments, but at the end of the day, you will open your wallet and say thank you for the privilege. We have seen this before. We saw it in 2006 with the launch of the PlayStation 3. Back then, Ken Kutaragi famously said that people should work more hours to afford the $600 price tag. The arrogance was staggering, and it almost destroyed the brand. It took years of humble apologies and massive price cuts for Sony to win back the fans. It seems they have forgotten that lesson. They have forgotten that for the players wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise. And that promise is currently being shredded in the name of quarterly earnings reports. Let's look at the advice portion of this video, because I don't just want to rant, I want to give you something practical. If you are sitting on the fence about the PS5 Pro, my honest feedback is wait. The value proposition is at an all-time low. We are closer to the end of this generation than the beginning. If you have a base PS5, keep it. If you are a PC gamer, stay there. The Pro features like enhanced ray tracing and PSSR upscaling are nice, but they aren't $1,000 plus a 20% markup. Nice. We are moving into an era where gaming is being treated like a high-end luxury hobby rather than the democratic, accessible form of entertainment it used to be. When the hardware becomes a status symbol and the software becomes a service that provides the bare minimum, the industry loses its soul. What do you think? Is there any world where a 20% price hike on 5-year-old hardware makes sense to you? Are you seeing those weird price differences on your own store account? I've heard from some users that even their PS Plus discount seems to fluctuate depending on how often they log in. If you have screenshots or stories about this, let me know in the comments. I read all of them, and I want to compile more evidence of this dynamic pricing nonsense. The great PlayStation price hike of 2026 is a warning shot. It tells us that the era of the affordable console might be over. If we accept this now, what will the PS6 launch at? I want to thank you for hanging out with me today and for watching the video until the end. I know these topics can be frustrating, but it's important we talk about them openly before these practices become the new normal. Your support, the likes, the shares and the comments means everything to a creator like me, especially as we try to navigate this increasingly expensive industry together. I'll be back soon with more news, more analysis and hopefully some better news next time, though looking at the current state of the industry, I wouldn't hold my breath. Take care of yourselves, keep gaming, and maybe start looking into those PC parts. They're starting to look like a bargain by comparison. See you in the next one. Peace.